The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
Reuben, it's opening day here in Philadelphia, and I'm talking about baseball.
Yeah, and 2 years ago, I was just reminded by my Facebook notifications. 2 years ago today, I was in Cleveland for the Indians opener. It was 31 degrees. It was windy. We were in the upper deck. Beers were $17, and I had a blast. And there's nothing quite like opening day of baseball season.
Yeah, it probably feels very similar to that at Citizens Bank Park today, a chilly one. But we have a lot to get to on the Eagle Eye podcast presented by PJ Wellahans with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Barrett Brooks is going to join us in just a few minutes. It's been a while since we've talked to Barrett. A lot has happened. So we'll get his thoughts on the draft and this crazy offseason. A little bit later in the episode, we're going to talk about the spring workouts and what might happen there. And also I did a deep dive on the lack of Alabama players the Eagles have drafted recently. But now I wanted to start off with, Wednesday was a tough day for Eagles fans, and it just happened to line up this way that LSU and Florida had their pro days on the same day. And no surprise here, but Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts just absolutely killed it.
Yeah, it's really been interesting. I don't know if any of the top prospects has really had a disappointing pro day, and it's become such a skill. Pro day and playing football are completely different skills. You really, so these guys, they all have trainers. They all go to these trainers they're not football coaches. They're basically like pro day coaches, and they will teach you how to, I was watching, I think it was Justin Fields 40. And he came out of his start and looked like a sprinter. There's your track reference for today. He looked like an elite sprinter with his form, the way he came up from his start, and he ran some crazy time. And these guys are all running. And I think part of it is, it's not the NFL clock. It's stopwatches. So the times are going to be faster. But even like all the drills, these guys are so prepared for these things. Because, and especially this year, for guys who opted out or had, only played 5 games, they've had months to just focus on getting ready for their pro day. So they're impressive. The numbers are impressive, and it's incredible to watch. But I think you kind of just keep it in context that a pro day, just like the combine, is not football, but you certainly see some remarkable traits with these guys.
Yeah, and obviously the times you have to take with a grain of salt this year. That's the beauty of the combine, is that you're really apples to apples there, and you can compare them so much easier. Whereas the pro days, you're all on hand times, and but even with that, so Jamar Chase runs a 4.38. All right, let's say it's not a 4.38. Let's add. What do you want to add to that?
I don't know. I don't know what the equivalent.
Yeah, I don't know. But add whatever you want. Still a 4.4. He's still really fast. He's still fast enough. There's no concerns with speed, and the jumps are the jumps. You're jumping 42 inches in the air. You're jumping 42 inches in the air, and that's what he did. So, the pro day numbers, the times you can take with a grain of salt. But even if you add 0.2 of a second to it, he's still flying.
Sure.
And you watched him and you watched Kyle Pitts, and you're just thinking, man, for Howie's sake, you hope those guys go 4.5.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly that. Pitts is one guy who, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone like him at that size, with that speed and athleticism and power. And he is a specimen, but he could also play. The film is there too. The tape is there. So he's got it. I just think he's going to be the first non-QB taken. And either one of these guys, to think that they could have had one, but yeah, if they go 4.5, Howie's off the hook. I can't wait to see.
He's going to be rooting for it, man.
He really is. I can't wait to see what kind of, because we've seen, every year there's these hot shot wide receivers come out and have great rookie seasons. Generally guys that the Eagles could have had. but I don't know if we've ever seen a guy like Pitts, with that skill set and that speed, and who's really a hybrid, almost a wide receiver. Like Claypool is kind of a hybrid, and he's good, especially against the Eagles. But Kyle Pitts is Chase Claypool on multiplied. So
yeah, and people talk about Pitts like he's not really. He's a tight end. He is a tight end. He lines up on he's not out wide a lot. He's a tight end who has receiver attributes, which is scary.
Right. But I think in the NFL, I can see a team moving him around, a lot more than he did in college. Offenses are more developed generally in
the beauty of him is having him as a tight end.
Right. The matchups, we it's a tired phrase, matchup nightmare, but I don't know how you cover
him. You can't put a linebacker on him. You put a corner on him, he's just going to moss him every time. That's the move, is you put a corner on him. But I'll take that matchup if I'm a team. He had a lot of corners on him. He still did what he did. It wasn't like college teams were throwing out, some seventh-round linebacker on him. They were putting their corners on him. He was playing South Carolina and J.C. Horns on him. It's not like teams were blind to this at the college level. That they knew it was a matchup nightmare, but he's going to continue to be that. And it's just, you look at both of these guys, and if the Eagles had a chance to get one of these guys and they don't do it, I don't know if it's worth it. We're not going to know whether or not that trade was worth it for a few years, but if one of these guys turns into a stud and they could have had one of them, it's not going to look good early.
You're right. And yeah, it could go a lot of different ways, but yes. We've talked about this. I understand going to 12. I know what they were thinking, but I don't like it. But again, if they're both gone, maybe Howie kind of figured they're both going to be gone by 5. We're not getting one of those anyway. And then there's a drop off.
If they're both gone, then I like the trade. I just don't know. You're kind of trusting that Howie has enough intel here to think that he's right. And if he is, great. Because those two guys, they're like the prizes to me. One of those two guys. I think there is a drop off after that.
Yeah. And Howie's, I shouldn't say Howie, but this front office's judgment on wide receivers has been so bad that if they think, well, Jamar Chase, he's not, we don't think he's as good. They've been wrong about everybody. So, you can only hope these guys are gone. And I think there's a fair chance at that.
Yeah, I think so too. And how on draft night, how he's going to be crossing his fingers and holding a rabbit's foot and just hoping those guys go 4 or 5.
But I don't even know if he thinks that way, because he's so confident in what they do, and he just has such a belief. I was talking to somebody, and I made the comparison of Howie with the draft. Howie is so good at the machinations of the draft, trading and understanding value of picks and turning picks into other picks. And he reminds me of a kid whose parents get him all this really fancy tennis equipment, all these he's got a fancy racket bag. He's got 8 rackets. He's got all of the most expensive tennis clothes, and he gets out on the court and he can't hit the ball over the net. That's for some reason that image comes to me when I think about Howie as a GM. He can get you the picks. He can move around, and he's always done really well with that. He's always, wow, that's a great trade. But then he just gets the wrong guy. So we'll see. It's certainly going to be interesting. And I'm on the record as saying, if this draft is a bust, he's not going to be here for next year's draft. I don't care. I don't care how close he is to Jeff Lurie. He's got to nail this draft or he's gone.
Yeah, we disagree on that, because I don't think a year is enough time to determine whether or not this draft was a bust.
But it will be enough time to evaluate Rager and J-Jaw and Dillard.
Sure, but you're also going to be in the middle of this process. And look, you can argue that he shouldn't be here now, but you're in the middle of this process. He just got you potentially 3 first-round picks next year. To not let him see it through doesn't make sense to me.
A lot doesn't make sense. Maybe Jeff Lurie says, you know what? We have these 3 first-round picks in 2022. I think I want to bring someone else in to make those picks.
Jeff goes, I'm making these picks. Let's do it.
Owner/GM. I don't know. Jeffrey's son's available. You never know. Hey, beer, wings, sports, all my favorite things, all your favorite things.
Love it.
PJ Wheelahands is the place to be to get all 3. I love Wheelahands. Local sports fans gather together to catch all the action at your neighborhood PJs. Now go to pjspub.com and find a location near you, and there's one everywhere.
Joining us now on the Eagle Eye podcast presented by PJ Wheelahands, our old buddy Barrett Brooks. Barrett, it's been a while, man. How are you?
No, thanks for letting me back on the show, guys. Appreciate it, man. I love the Eagle Eye podcast, man.
We had a 3-month ban. You did some bad stuff. We wouldn't let you back on.
Well, I didn't do it. The Eagles did it. So
yeah, the Eagles have done a lot. Look, so we have a lot to get to with you, and we want to talk about the offseason. And I mean, there's a new coach, new quarterback, all in the time since we last spoke to you. But
right.
The big news recently, obviously, is the trade down from 6 to 12. We had spent about a month talking about the options at number 6, and now all of a sudden they're back at 12. And first, what was your reaction to the move? And then we'll get into the options they have there.
I'm trying to understand why they did it, dropping back, because I'm a fisherman. I love to go fishing. You've been on my boat, I'm waiting for you to come get on my boat, Reuben. But at the end of the day,
by the way, though, I've been on the boat. It was docked. We didn't go anywhere. I don't want to we're not going out on fishing trips together. I showed up to say hi, and the boat was at. Go ahead.
Well, and I know if I get on that boat with you, we're getting stuck in the Suez Canal. I know that.
I got you guys. I'll definitely take you guys out, and I'll make sure you get back. But, if we're talking about trading back from 6 to 12, like I said, I'm a fisherman, and I use the analogy. All right, we have a trophy fish pond right here. Then we have a big fish pond. Then we have the pond that the Eagles have been swimming in the past couple of years in a mediocrity. So we had a chance to be in that trophy fish pond, a pond in which we can get the biggest fish we can get and get it mounted on our wall. He'll be a fixture here for the next 10 years. Now we can go to this big fish pond and we could possibly get a trophy fish, but it's going to take a lot more effort in the way I'm using my lures, the way I'm using my bait and everything else. But if I'd have stayed in that big fish pond, things would have been okay. You could have got a generational talent at pick number 6. We're looking at the numbers that the guys are having right now, Jamar Chase of 4.3. Come on now. We're talking about a trophy fish that will be, having defense fear for a long time. And we might not be able to get that at pick number 12. Jamar Chase is going to be that guy. We're talking about, arguably the best receiver last year as a rookie, that played right alongside Jamar Chase. And Jamar Chase was definitely the better player in 2019. So when they had Jefferson and him playing out there, when they won a national championship, so we know his skill set. But to, pass up that opportunity. A generational talent like Kyle Pitts. This guy is 6'5.5", 6'6", 245 pounds, and he runs a 4.40. He's faster than all 3 of the top corners that came out this year. That are coming out this year. So, when you have that type of talent, those type of genes that you can bring on this team, they can be solid for years and years and years, especially when in that offense that hasn't had, a chance to score at every opportunity, who lacked the scoring all last year, probably for the past 2 years. It's kind of a downer to me that you pass up on talent like that.
That was my initial reaction too. And I can understand what they're thinking. They just need a volume of players. But, and we were talking about this recently, they've only had 2 top 10 picks in the last 20 years, Carson and Lane.
Wow.
And, those opportunities don't come along. They might start coming along more often for this team. Maybe that's what they're figuring, but you can't count on them. And they had to trade, obviously had to trade up to get Carson. So they're not picking, it's not a place you want to be. And when you get that option, I'm with you. You gotta you got to get an elite player there, a guy who can change your franchise. And you might get that at 12, but I think you have an exponentially better shot at getting that at 6.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you look at a situation where the Eagles have not had anybody to be a game changer. There's nobody that anybody fears when they look across the line at an Eagles team, from any position right now, with the exception of, you might have fear Fletcher Cox. But after that, it pretty much is, all right, we can handle him. It's just, he's, a guy like BG is going to keep going and going and going. Eventually he's going to get there. But when you got Fletcher Cox, he's going to be a guy that you have to concentrate on. Other than that, I'm trying to think of what player do you actually fear from this team? If you're, because with me being a player when I was playing, I would look across the line of scrimmage, and when you see somebody like, rest in peace, Junior Seau coming at you, or you look over, you see Ray Lewis sitting there. You're going to think, all right, I got a double team here, but I know if I stay just a split second too long, Ray is going to make the play. He's going to be out of here. He's going to go make the play. We don't have a player like that defenses have to fend, offenses have to fend, or special teams. And we need that type of talent on this team, because if you look at everybody else in our division is going out and getting that talent, whether it be through drafting or, with the Giants, Saquon Barkley, you got the, with the Washington football team, you have their whole front seven. You look at Dallas, they have 3 great wide receivers. What do we have that everybody fears? I don't see it.
Let me go devil's advocate with you. If they can get out of 12 with one of the top 3 corners, say Caleb Farley, say he drops a little bit because of the injury concerns, one of those guys, and then they can get a receiver at 37, or even if they move up a little bit from 37, if they can get out of there with a second-round receiver and a top cornerback, would that make you feel any differently?
It would, because at this point, you have to have guys that can cover. I mean, look at the talent level at the wide receiver position in this division. It used to be a run division. Well, I think now it's going to turn into a passing division. Like I said, the 3 great, receivers with Dallas. You look at the Washington football team; they go out and get Samuels from the Panthers, and then the Giants. I mean, they, like it or not, they went and retooled that offense. They got arguably one of the best tight ends in free agency. And then they get the top wide receiver in free agency. They went out and got, Ross, who's, a 4-3 guy, and they can fit him in the system. He may be able to go out there and do some things that he couldn't do when he was with the Bengals. So everybody's retooling, everybody's ready to go ahead and press this division. I don't see the Eagles are doing it. But if they did go out and get a top corner, just like you said, I'd be happy with that, because we need somebody opposite of Slay in our defense. I'm tired of every time I look and they passing the ball, I look up, I got to hold my breath, because we don't have the necessary corners to go out there and play man-to-man with a guy, or, be, on the second or even the first team wide receiver out there. It's a crapshoot every time you turn around and you look at it. I want some stability at the cornerback position. I would love to have one of those top 3 guys, whether J.C. Horn, Fairley, like you said, Patrick Surtain. On my wish list, that's pretty high on my wish list. I would be perfect with that. And if they get another receiver, that's fine too, to work with these, young guys we already have in the fold. I mean, it could really make things happen, but we need something. And since we did, since we're on the, from 6 to 12, I think it really takes us out of that big talent pool of offensive players. So now you really have to go defense. To me, it's got to be a defensive direction, picking at number 12.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at corner, it kind of lines up that way. To me, it's clearly their biggest need. It surpasses receiver to me. At least they have some options at receiver. They're not great options, but they have some options. They really have nothing at corner. Even you can't even count on Slay long term. He's a 30-year-old guy. He'll be here for a couple more years, but you really need someone to be your top corner at some point. So you look at these 3 guys, and there are differing opinions. A year ago, Caleb Farley would have been considered the top guy, and that's obviously changed a little bit. J.C. Horn's coming on strong. He had a great pro day. Patrick Surtain has been so consistent. I mean, he's day one. I think you can plug and play him and not have many worries. When you look at those 3 guys specifically, if the Eagles were to take one of them, say all 3 are on the board, Barrett, You're there at 12, and let's say all the offensive options are kind of gone. Like even Smith and Waddle, they're gone. So you're looking at a corner. Which guy would you take?
The three of them, when I look at the three of them, I look at Patrick Surtain. To me, he's a day one guy. You can plug him in and play. His pops played in the league. I played against his pops when I was there. I really feel as though he's the best as far as skill set, as far as being able to do everything. He can press corner. He could be an off corner. His technique is more advanced than the other two. He's a guy that he's been brought up through the ranks with his father's help of being one of the top corners because his technique. He runs the routes better than most wide receivers when he's out there playing. He can jump routes because he understands how to break down film and get tendencies. He's the one that's most polished and NFL ready right now. The best athlete out of the three, I have to go with J.C. Horn. I mean, this guy, he's a 4.4, 4.3 guy. He can recover if he does make a mistake. He's more suited to be a press corner. He can play off, but I think he's more comfortable if he can put his hands on somebody and run with them. That way, if he does get beat, he can recover from it. You look at Fairley. Now we're talking about a guy. You talk about his issues with health. I think he had a year, off from playing, and I think that's going to make him very healthy. You won't have to worry about it necessarily. He's a guy that he's probably the most physical of all of them. His numbers as far as what he's going to run in his 40 are kind of the same with Patrick Surtain, but he still has the ability and understanding of how to stop routes. He learned from the 2019 season. He used to get beat with a lot of double move. Now he doesn't get beat as much because he knows how to play with his eyes and understand what they're trying to do to him to beat him. So that's all a maturity level that he's brought from being out, when he played in 2019 that made him a better player. So I'm sure that he's been around a lot of guys that can help him in his maturation of being a better corner and develop those instincts that he had, that he's really started to turn the corner in 2019. So he would probably be my number two guy. I think Patrick Surtain first. He would be second, and I think I have Horn the third guy. But I'd be happy with either one of them.
Now, is the Horn thing just because it's a little bit more of a projection?
Yes, it is a project. He is a project, but he's so competitive too. I can remember, hearing yesterday that he was a guy that he wanted to know what all the top corners did as far as what they ran in a 40. How their drills went. He wanted to top those drills. He wanted to make sure he beat everybody in all those drills. And he did it. He was that competitive that he did that. You can take that competitive nature and transfer it on the field, and, he could be a pretty good player. Projectedly, he'll still be a day one starter, but he won't be as good as a Patrick Surtain day one. Now, his ceiling will be a lot higher. He can develop into one of the best cornerbacks in the league. But at this point, I say, Patrick Surtain is a guy that you can play right now. He'll be good for a long time. He'll be a cornerstone of your defense for a long time. Horn could be the same thing, but it's going to take him a little bit to develop into that guy. He's going to take some bumps and bruises more so than a Surtain will.
I was writing about this whole thing, corner at 12, and you look at all the top corners in the league: Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, Gilmore, Tre'Davious White, Jalen Ramsey. These are all first-round picks. But you look at the Eagles' best skill guys. I mean, they've all been in the second and third round, whether it's Ertz, Deshaun, Shady, Miles, Goddard. I mean, these are all second and third round.
J-Jaw.
Who's that?
J-Jaw.
He said on purpose. Who's that?
So, and then I started thinking, like, who's the last elite skill guy the Eagles got in the first round? Macklin, who's really good. But it's really rare. Like before that, it might be Mike Quick. You can get receivers and backs and tight ends in the second and third. I mean, Westbrook, Deuce Staley, second, third round guys. And Deshaun, Shady. I mean, these are like these are all-time Ertz. These are all-time Eagles.
Dawkins.
And defensively, yeah, Doc was a 2. So you can get skill guys in the second round and corners in the first round. It seems to be the metric. It just seems to fall that way for whatever reason. Eagles haven't drafted a corner in the first round since Lito in 2002, who's the last Pro Bowl corner they drafted. And also, and I looked this up, Dave, we were talking about this. He's the last corner they drafted that they gave a second long-term contract to, was Lito Shepherd. That was 2 decades ago. So really, as much as I like the idea of getting that generational guy at 6, I can understand why you would want to go 12, 37 and line it up that way. But I just don't know if I have the faith in Howie and this front office to make the right pick there. Where at 6, you feel like, all right, they're gonna get the right guy. So I think with some GMs, I might feel better about the trade. With this team, you just worry that they're going to get the wrong guy.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, just from the progression of how that defense in Indianapolis went, and they really turned the corner when they went out and got, Leonard, their Pro Bowl middle linebacker. I mean, I think he turned the tides on how you play offense against that defense with, how he goes out there and plays. And with Gannon being the defensive coordinator and working closely with a guy like Leonard, I think he might go in the direction of also getting Parsons if he's there. I would not be mad if they did do that because, Parsons is a guy, look at his measurables. He's everything. I mean, he was everything to that defense with Penn State. He could be a game changer that, the Eagles need. Now, we know that they don't draft linebackers. You guys been beating this into my head for the past 5 years. They don't draft linebackers in the first round. They just won't do it. It's against their religion to do it, and they just won't do it. But I think this may be the coaching staff that could, possibly turn the corner and understand. I mean, like I said earlier on, there's nothing like looking across the offensive line, looking at that defense and seeing a guy back there that's all world that you have to account for. Look at Bobby Wagner. You can't just double team their defensive line because you have to learn where Wags is going to go, where he's going to do. You have to account for him in the number count. He can blitz. Parsons can do everything. He's huge, 6'3". I mean, a big, thick guy. He can run from sideline to sideline. He has all the measurables that you want from a quality linebacker, and he is the best linebacker in this draft. Why not take a shot at a guy that could be a talent in the middle of your defense and solidify the linebacker position for a long time? And that's where you have to play defense these days. Linebackers have to be more than just guys who will go be run stoppers. They got to go out there and cover also, and he can do it all. So, I mean, I think that he is definitely a guy. I would go in that direction also. And go ahead, guys. I understand you're going to do it to me again. You're going to beat me down. The Eagles don't draft linebackers in the first round, but he'll be a great pick for this defense.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the possibility though recently because you look at John Gannon, and if I don't know if he's going to have as much autonomy as Jim Schwartz had. I don't know if he's going to have that big a say. Schwartz came in here as a former head coach. He'd been in the league for a few decades. I mean, Gannon's a first-time defensive coordinator, but I mean, he is also a big reason they hired Nick Sirianni. I mean, they liked Jonathan Gannon. He's very well thought of around the league. And if you look at his last 2 stops, I mean, Minnesota and Indy, I mean, Minnesota's put some valuable resources into the linebacker position. It's a staple of the Zimmer defense. And then you mentioned Darius Leonard, all pro. I mean, you're right. He's changed Eberflus's defense out there. He's made that defense what it is. So I still don't think it's the most likely outcome, right? I mean, even Howie, a few years ago, I couldn't believe it. We were at the Combine, and he does his on stage chat with reporters, and then he does one off to the side with just the Philly guys. And he basically admitted this a few years ago. He basically admitted yeah, we punt on linebackers because we value positions differently, and they value the defensive line first on defense, and then secondary, and then a pretty distant third has been linebackers. But you're right. If there's ever a time to change that, it could be right now. Right. I mean, you have a defense that is more predicated on having that stud in the middle. And now it might line up. I mean, Parsons could legitimately be the best player available when they pick a 12.
Yeah. We're so conditioned to saying they'll never do it, but if they're ever going to do it, it's going to be this year. I mean, everything kind of, it just makes sense. But if they feel like they can get, a cornerback that they feel just as good about, they're gonna go that way every time. I would have no problem with Parsons. Even though we were looking this up, they've never, until Miles Sanders, they'd never drafted a good player out of Penn State. It's pretty amazing. Way too many Tony Hunts and Tony Stewarts and guys like that. But I would have no problem with it. You wouldn't hear me complaining if they took Parsons. I don't see it happening. I think if cornerback didn't line up as well as it does at 12, it might be more realistic. I mean, if they were just going best player available, and certainly it's a guy of need, but corner matches both best available and need. I just don't see him taking Parsons, but man, I wouldn't mind seeing it. Like we said, 42 years, Jerry Robinson, 1979, last linebacker in the first round. And their second round linebacker, I mean, and people, I mean, they did devote resources to linebacker the Super Bowl year. I mean, Bradham had a big contract, his second contract. Kendricks was a second round pick. He wasn't a 1, but he was close to it. So, I mean, they have won with devoting resources to linebackers. So
Hicks was hurt, but he was a 3rd. I mean, and that was chip year, but still.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think of the Quentin Cavers and Matt McCoys and James Darlings and all the second round picks they've, Barry Gardner.
Wow, you're right, man.
They were all second round picks.
Yeah. James Darling. That's going back. Remember James?
Yeah. And I mean, he was okay. He started a couple of years, but you get a linebacker in the second round, you expect a little bit more than you get from Quentin Caver or, Barry Gardner. I always want to say Barry Gardner and Rich Kotite voice. Gardner, this kid Gardner, but he didn't draft him. And Andy redrafted him. I don't know why. This kid
Right.
Gardner, he's going to be. He's a thumper. This kid Gardner's a thumper.
Makes no sense.
Makes no sense.
0 sense. Barry, so it's funny because we talked about the Eagles like valuing positions over other positions, and they obviously value the lines more than anything, but it doesn't really look like it's lining up for them at 12. I mean, maybe Rashawn Slater's there, maybe Darisaw from Virginia Tech on the O-line. Defensive line, I think it'd probably be a reach for
It'll definitely be a reach.
I mean, is that how you view that? A reach for D-line? But O-line, like if Slater's there, that's not a reach, is it?
No, Slater's probably the most I mean, look at his tape, man. I mean, he shut down a lot of really, really good pass rushers, Chase, his one-on-one, they one-on-one blocked him in 2019, the entire game, and he gave Chase the business. And Chase ended up being the first overall pick, had a great rookie season. I mean, he shut him down, locked him down. He has great technique. He has great hand placements. He's not one of those guys that have a lot of dog in him, but he understands what his value is as a left tackle, protecting the backside. He takes it personal on shutting down who's ever in front of him. He's not really a run blocker, but he is a definite pass blocker, and he can go out there and shut just about any guy you have down there that you line him up against. Even from a 3-point stance, he gets out of stance, gets quick, quick as far as a setup. His hand placement gets in there. He shoots his hands. He's able to stop. He can bend on a bull rush. He can do all the things that you want as far as technique from an offensive lineman. He could be a guy that, yes, you could bring him in. You can plug and play him at any tackle, left or right, or you can put him at guard. I don't think he's one-dimensional as a player like, what they have at the tackle position right now. But he could play anything or play anywhere on that offensive line. I don't know what we're going to do with Dillard. If you move him to guard, because I don't think he has enough to be a starter right now. He doesn't have the attitude to be a starter right now. I really think that we have to concentrate on maybe getting a guy that's going to replace Kelsey, but I don't see any centers right now that can come in and be worthy of a first round pick. So I mean, there's not a lot, as far as value at the number 12 pick. When you get past a guy like Slater or was it Darrison, guys like that.
Well,
But
my thing is, are they going to give up on Dillard after 4 starts? Three of them at left, 1 at right, and can they take a left tackle or an O tackle in the first round twice in 3 years?
Nope.
And what's Mulata's ceiling? And how strong do they believe in Jordan Mulata? And I don't know the answer to that. I think he's pretty good, but I don't know. I don't know how good he'll be. I don't know if he'll be an elite player. I think he's already pretty darn good.
He has a lot of maturing to do, though. I mean, I could see him. Leave that damn ukulele alone. Go out there and be a tough. I don't know what else you need. I mean, feed him gunpowder and hot sauce. Make him tough. Just make him. Just a guy that's gonna go out there and just mash you. Because if he ever got that type of tenacity and instinct, he'd be a great player. But I don't think it means as much to him right now to be a nasty type of player that you need to be protecting the blind side. He showed so much promise last year, so much progress as an offensive lineman. I mean, I saw him as a top-tier offensive lineman last year, that if he keeps on developing and gets a different attitude and something clicks in him, he could be a dominant force. But I don't know if he has that in him. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can't just make a guy be a nasty player. You can't make a guy be tough. And I don't know if he has that in him. We'll have to see.
Tough. I thought he showed a lot of toughness, and I hear what you're saying. He's so new to the game. I think, his emphasis has always just been on learning the technique and learning the game. But man, I thought he showed some grit out there and some toughness, durability, versatility, never complain, right side, left side, start, back up. I liked his attitude.
My favorite moment for him last year was the one fumble where the ball's loose and he just decked a guy. Like that, to me, that was just like instinct of like, I'm going to hit someone because I'm playing football and I'm allowed to hit someone. And I like that. I mean, because in the moment he didn't have to think about technique. You can kind of just see the instinct come out, and he said, I'm going to deck this guy. And he did. And I think that'll come. I think Rube's right. Like, I think he's been so focused on technique that it's hard to get out of that. Right. Like eventually it'll be like second nature, where you won't have to like overthink it on it. Like right now he's thinking like, I got to do this, and this, like a checklist. Eventually he'll do it without necessarily thinking about each step. And once he gets there, then I think he can kind of unleash that 6'8", 350 on people. And he's so intriguing. So I like, if they're sitting there at 12, and even if Slater is there and he's the best player available, teams don't pick the best player available. It's not just that simple. It's best player available with parameters. And
yes,
sometimes the parameter is need. Sometimes the parameter is how we value positions. The tie goes to the position we value more. So with all those things, I think they'd lean to another position before they take a tackle.
I hope they will. And like you said, I'm talking about if I saw it in the Dallas game, actually. I saw him turn the corner as far as going out there and lighting guys up. He was actually finishing guys, and that's the nastiness. He finished guys, he brought guys to the ground and finished them and then jumped on top of them. Those are the things you need to be great. And I saw it in him in the Dallas game. I'm like, that's what I've been looking for. That right there, him finishing a guy right there. And, I mean, that's when I turned the corner saying, this is our future left tackle. I said, this is our guy right now. He learned that he can go out there and put his hands on people and not get arrested for it. He can put his hands on people and not be in trouble. I think he was one of those kids when he was younger. Oh, don't touch him. You might hurt him. Well, now you can touch him and hurt him. And I think he saw that last year and he took advantage of it.
I never had that problem. I was a kid like, please don't hit me. I'm too small.
I did. Yeah, I had that problem.
Yeah. I think we were probably slightly different sizes when we were children, Barrett. Before we let you go, it's been such a we talked about the draft for so long, but this offseason has been crazy. We haven't talked to you since the end of the year. Kind of your reaction to Doug getting fired, Carson getting traded, the whole transition this team is going through right now.
What happened? I mean, what? I mean, it just went crazy, man. The past 8 months. You know, I mean, you would have to say probably no. I'll say probably the last 5-6 months has been a whirlwind. I've never seen anything like this in my life. You know, you cut a Super Bowl winning coach for a player in Carson, and when you cut him and you let him go, you then turn around, he's still not happy, and then he leaves and they let him go. And the biggest, the biggest hole in your salary cap is from a guy that's not even there. And you know, I mean, it blew me away that even happened here. Because remember, we talked before. You could have bought me with a wood nickel. You know, if Carson would have been traded. I was on the assumption money just didn't make sense for that to happen. And lo and behold, it happened. They are willing to take that black eye and go into this and say, all right, we're just going to let this guy go. I mean, to me, that's that's the darndest thing I've ever seen in my life. You know, I mean, I'm still in awe that it happened. You guys are right, man. I can't believe that it happened because, you know, you just don't do that. You don't waste money like that. And you know, you can't give up on talent. I mean, he's a talented guy and, you know, they let him go. So now I'm thinking, well, you let the coach go because of him, then he still goes. And then you go and you hire a guy that has no coaching experience, no head coaching experience. And the reason why you let Doug go is because he wanted to pick his own staff. And you let this young guy who has no head coaching experience pick his entire staff. So I was just confused about everything that was going on with this Eagles organization. I don't think they really understand what's going on in this Eagles organization right now. I mean, they have a lot to show this year. You know, I understand they're not going to be good. I understand that, you know, they're going to be behind the buck. They still have an unproven quarterback. You know, 3.5 games is not enough of a parameter on what this guy is. I think he can be good. We have no choice but to see if he's going to be good. But, you know, it's just been a whirlwind that I never thought I'd ever see. It's, you know, things like this just don't happen. You don't waste money like that. You don't let talent like that go. You don't let a head coach that's 3 years removed from a Super Bowl go. You know, usually give him 5 years. You know, there was a lot of, all right, this shouldn't have happened in this offseason. That shouldn't have happened, but it happened.
Yeah, it was. It's been weird.
I mean, if Carson doesn't want to be, if you have a quarterback that's miserable for whatever reason, doesn't want to be here, doesn't want to fight for his job, I mean, what choice do you have? Whatever the cap hit is, you know, that's how I look at it.
Well, you know, I've seen, you know, with me playing, I've seen players that don't want to be there. But, you know, when you get them on tape, you can't see it because, you know, the pride you have as a player, you know, the fight that you have as a player that won't let them, you know, won't let anybody, you know, outside the organization know. I mean, there were plenty of guys that didn't want to play at a place that, you know, all right, they just had to suck it up. They just had to play there. Well, see, I've never seen that before. I've never seen a player to say, you know, all right, and just give up like that. That's unheard of, especially at the position that he's at. You know, I mean, I didn't understand. I can remember being in camp in Cleveland, and Tim Couch didn't want to be there. Hated Cleveland, didn't want to be there. I can't say that his play dictated so because he just sucked. But you know, he you know, I was just there in camp and his play sucked when he were in camp, you know, but he didn't want to be, but they weren't just gonna let him go. He's a first round pick. You know, they're just not gonna let him just leave. So he had to make sure he sucked it up and he had to play, even though he didn't want to be there. Hell, half the time Mike Mamula was there, he didn't want to be there. You know what I'm saying? He wanted to be somewhere else. But you know, you just don't have the time to tell an organization, look, I don't want to be here. Trade me. That, to me, that's just unheard of. I've never seen it in a locker room like that you would allow it to happen, especially with the cap hit that you have to endure afterwards. That's just, you know, something I've never seen before. I've never seen things like this happen in an organization. This is almost like the Twilight Zone for me because a lot of things that happen were not supposed to happen and they're happening still. You know, this is crazy to me.
And if the players know the QB doesn't want to be there, I don't know how that guy could be a leader in that locker room and have any sort of voice. I don't know how he can perform if everyone knows he doesn't want to be here. He's miserable. He's unhappy. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough situation because the quarterback situation, it's a unique position because they have to be the leader, and he just I don't see how this is going to change even in Indianapolis that he's not a leader. He's not the leader type. He's not built like that. He's a guy that, all right, if you enjoy hunting and you enjoy the Lord, then you're going to be his guy. But if that's 80% of the guys in that locker room or guys that want to go to strip clubs, want to kick it, what I'm saying, going every other word is a curse word, and he just doesn't get down with those type of guys. He just doesn't feel comfortable around those type of people. It doesn't. So how can you lead somebody in that capacity when you know that you don't? They could feel that he doesn't like them. So I'll just tell you this: a zebra never loses his stripes, and it might be great this year, it might even be great the next year, but eventually Carson will get back to being Carson, and he'll go back to being that guy. And I think that, the organization is just going to have to find a way to, keep him on the team and keep him from, turning the tables like he did here in Philadelphia. He's just not going to be one of those rah-rah guys. He's not going to be a guy that, you're going to want to go out and have dinner with, but he is he's the quarterback of the team.
All right, we're now back to 0 days without a Carson mention. Every show, Barry, we try to get through without mentioning it. It hasn't happened yet.
I was about to say the player that we should not think of or talk about.
Yeah, like Voldemort. All right, we appreciate your time, Barrett. We'll catch you on the boat this summer. We'll
definitely,
sure.
guys. I'm definitely going to have you guys up, man. Appreciate you guys.
All right, take care, Barrett.
Take care.
Hey, Eagles fans, it's time to look forward to a dream vacation. The Philadelphia Eagles fan cruise tickets are selling out fast, like hotcakes. The ship is sailing March of 2022 for 7 days and 7 nights with Eagles fans and only Eagles fans. Book your tickets now at PhiladelphiaEaglesCruise.com.
Thanks to Barrett. And I don't even know if we should count that Carson mention against us because we haven't talked to him in so long. Like, we were doing pretty good, but I asked him about, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring up Carson, but I wanted to hear what he had to say about it. It's because it's such a crazy situation, and we've kind of moved on, but yeah, I had to get his take on it.
Yeah. So maybe the next show is the first one.
We're going to shoot for that next
we'll
show.
Shoot for it. Yeah. So I did this interesting look back because, it came to my mind. I did like a 10 possible picks for the number 12 selection, and 3 of them are Alabama guys. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, they don't take Alabama guys. Like, when's the last time? It's been 18 years, Rube, since they've drafted a player from Alabama. The Eagles have never drafted a player in the first round from Alabama. Yeah,
it's hard to believe. And I didn't believe it when you told me that yesterday. I started looking. I was like, oh, he must have missed a guy. But yeah, they haven't. Second round, but not the first round, which is crazy. And like you said, even the SEC as a whole, they've underdrafted compared to other teams lately.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to look this stuff up, but it's fascinating that. So the last player they took was Freddie Millins. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Millins, wide receiver.
Yeah, never played here, never played anywhere. He never actually played a game in the NFL.
I think he went to the Steelers. He was in camp with the Steelers after
he bounced around a little bit after he left here. But that was 2002. So since then, since the 2003 draft, there have been 117 Alabama players taken. The Eagles are the only team that haven't taken one, and every other team in the league has taken at least 2. And some people are going to count Jalen Hurts. He doesn't count to me because he from Alabama, sure, but by way of Oklahoma. And I don't think the Eagles take him without that year at Oklahoma.
No, it's where you graduated from, and he
or where you leave, yeah,
or where he played last. He doesn't count. Who's drafted the most?
The most, it's a pretty good drafting team. The Ravens with 9 Alabama players. Ravens, Patriots was 6, and Washington was 6. And you can say about what you want about Washington, but they've drafted good Alabama players for the most part.
And Ravens and Patriots they've won their share of Super Bowls. So they both won multiple during that stretch. So Patriots have won more than multiple. But yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, the Eagles have had different GMs during that period and different front offices, a ton of different coaches. So it's not one thing. But, yeah, sometimes I just did a FIP, didn't I? Yeah, no. Sometimes just take the guy from Alabama. You can't go wrong.
And it's not like there have been plenty of busts from Alabama too. It's not like you're guaranteed to get a great player. And I don't know if it's this, but there is a thing like it seems obvious to take players from Alabama. And there's this thought that the Eagles or some teams like to find their diamond in the roughs, which I guess is maybe true at some level. But I also wonder if like some of the Alabama guys have a lot of wear and tear, especially at some positions. I wonder if that has something to do with it. I don't know. Or it might just be a total coincidence, but it's a strange coincidence, right?
It is. Now I'm going to ask
Pretty
you.
Good program down there.
What's that?
Pretty good program down there.
Yeah, they do okay. I don't know if you have this information in front of you. I'm going to put you on the spot. Saran Stacy was a running back the Eagles drafted, I'm thinking in the early 90s.
96.
That was before 96.
92.
Yeah, yes, 92. Played 1 year, never got a carry, played special teams. I think he was like a top, he was in the 40s, if I remember. He was toward the middle of the second round. Was he the highest player they've ever taken pick wise?
I believe so. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe he was. He was 48 in 92.
Yeah, he was
went on to play for the Scottish Claymores.
I have a great story about Saran Stacy, but I can't tell it on the podcast. But if you ever run into me anywhere, ask me the Saran Stacy story.
Will you tell me later?
Yes, as long as you promise not to tell it on the podcast.
Okay, fair. I'll do that.
But he was a talented kid in college, and he just never got an opportunity. And I mean, he was. He had 2 really big seasons in college, if I remember. Never got a carry in the NFL, second round running back.
Yeah. And the Eagles have had some opportunities. There are some times where they haven't really, at least the top players from Alabama, they go really early sometimes, but the Eagles have had chances. Like they could have Marlon Humphrey a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. No, it's interesting. And that story inspired a story that I'm going to write in the next couple of days that I'm working on, which is what colleges have produced the most good Eagles over the years. And it's pretty interesting. The most interesting thing to me is the schools that haven't, like, Penn State. Miles Sanders is the only good player they've ever drafted from Penn State. And they've drafted like 23 guys. And some of these, like I was looking at Syracuse, who, in addition to Donovan, there's nobody. They've never, Robert Drummond is the next best guy. He had 1 good game in his career. And some of these colleges, like, and then I was on South Carolina because you have Sheldon Brown and Deuce. Who's the third guy to put them in that elite? There is no third guy, so it's really interesting how, and then there's some colleges and I write about it and produce like 3 multiple Pro Bowl Eagles over the years. It's really interesting. And
not necessarily the schools you would think of like powerhouses.
Yeah, the number 2 school on the list, and I'm not going to give away any secrets, but you can figure it out, produced 3 all-time Eagles, 2 all-time Eagles, and 1 really close to that.
Yeah.
And they were all drafted in the 5th round or later. So it's really interesting. I think there's definitely a element of chance to all this, but it's fun to look at.
Yeah, it is fun, and it's easy to break down. It takes a while, but I'll look forward to that.
Did you know on StatHead you can search the draft by conference?
Yeah,
that's a great thing.
That's how I figured out the SEC stats.
I was really hoping that you did that instead of having to go through each school.
Yeah, that would have taken me a long time. The last thing I wanted to mention here is hopefully we have some sort of spring workouts this year, but it seems like it's kind of a getting a little contentious between the NFL and NFLPA. The NFL wants to have in-person practices at some point this spring, and the NFLPA is like, hold on, NFL, like you're not the CDC. Let's pump the brakes and stay all virtual. I think there's value in having spring practices if they can do it safely.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not a health expert, but considering how the league did with the protocols this past year, practicing, these are non-contact practices in the spring. If you have your meetings virtually and you're on the field together for an hour and a half, non-contact, to me, that sure seems safe. So,
and they're still voluntary.
And they are technically voluntary. And I would think this year, if a player wasn't comfortable, I would hope that with the vaccinations going on and the protocols and the nature of outdoor practices, meetings inside, I do think they're very valuable. You heard so many players during the last year, especially the young guys, talk about not having them, and they did what they could virtually, but being out on the field is, there's really no substitute for that. So
to me, it's frustrating because the loudest voices in the NFLPA among the players are the older players who would rather not be at OTAs, but like, I want them to put themselves back in the shoes of being a first or second year player and remembering how valuable that is, not just for your learning, but also to get in front of coaches and kind of prove your worth to them. And I think they should have them. And that's not to minimize the health risk, but if you're able to just have a full season, why can't you have spring practices?
Well, I totally agree. And I hope it works out. My hunch is it'll work out on a more limited basis. Maybe a couple weeks, maybe 3 practices for 2 weeks or something, but anything would be a bonus. Anything would help.
Yeah. And the Eagles, in years past, if you had a new head coach, you'd get to start earlier. You'd have an extra mini camp. That's not the case this year. So all the teams start their offseason program on April 19th. Planning to be virtual now. Hopefully we'll see some in-person stuff, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, hope it works out.
Give me a quick Phillies prediction this year. You think they're going to playoffs?
I think they're pretty good. I think the Phillies are pretty good. I like what they've done. I like their lineup. I think the bullpen's upgraded. They're 1-2 in the rotation. I mean, how did Wheeler never win more than like 11 games with the Mets? I mean, he is unbelievable. What a talent. So I think they're going to win 90 games. I do. I think they're going to win 90, 91 games. I do think they're a playoff team. And I think it's going to be a fun year to watch.
That'll be great. The Braves are still good, so I don't know if they're going to win the division, but it'd be great to see a playoff team back in Philly. We know the Sixers are going, the Flyers are falling apart fast, and we know the Eagles situation. So I'll take a good baseball team in town.
The good thing about when the Phillies aren't good is Corey Seidman comes up with the best stats when bullpen stat. Well, the bullpen's now given up 23 runs in the last 3 2/3. It's the most the Phillies bullpen has allowed it in a stretch of 3 2/3 innings since 1938. I love Corey's stats.
Are you envious of, you obviously love football and you cover football and you do it well and you do the stats well, but baseball has just such a wealth of stats.
It does, but they also play every day. So you never have a chance to sit back and and as much as I love covering Eagles games, there's nothing like Monday through Saturday. We get to analyze and go over things and they don't do that in baseball because they play every day. So
yeah,
I'll stick to football.
Yeah, I think I will too. And if you'll let us, we'll keep doing this podcast. If you enjoy it, rate, subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, click that subscribe button. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by PJ Wellahans. We'll talk to you guys soon.